vulnerable and naked. But we will not leave it there. Concern is surely called for, but not depression. We will show how young women are not stupid, ignorant, witless pawns of sexual desire. We will show how, with guidance and encouragement, they can avoid destructive behaviors. We will show how making healthy choices can markedly increase girls' chances of achieving their full potential. We want our young women to experience health, hope, and happiness. We know you want the same things for your daughter. We want to help you help them. So let's get started. Chapter 3: The Sexual Lives of Teens and Young Adults. Just what are teens and young adults in the United States doing with their bodies? Fortunately, ongoing research has provided solid answers to this question. Unfortunately, if you are like most parents, you will find the answers to be downright disturbing. Vigan Gorian, a professor at Loyola College, quotes one of his female students. "It may not be that dating is at the brink of extinction, but it has taken a back seat in the modern-day lives of students. Hooking up, going out, going steady, and dating, contrary to what some may think, are not the same thing. If you are going out with someone, it means that you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You are in a steady relationship with that person. However, a couple needn't actually go anywhere, go on dates together, to be in this kind of relationship. Hooking up is basically dating without the romance. It has become customary for young adults to simply cut to the chase, the sexual part of a relationship. A hookup can be a one-time thing, as it most often is, or it can be a semi-regular thing, but not a full relationship, although it may take on the signs of one. One might conclude that modern-day youth have simply gotten lazy and careless. Most are not looking for a romantic relationship. They see the new freedom and plethora of sexual opportunities and simply take what they can get. They get to college and it's an amusement park with so many different enticing rides. One would be missing out on the whole experience to settle with the first one they tried. And why should they bother with the responsibility and formalities of a date when they have a better chance of getting immediate satisfaction after buying a few drinks at a bar? Co-ed dormitories, are they an ideal situation or a sad form of prostitution? You go out with your friends on your terms. After a few drinks, you're both attracted. Interested and lonely, you go together. No obligations, no responsibilities, and no rules. Then there is that late-night booty call. This has become such a custom of the college lifestyle that most have come to accept it, although maybe not respect it. If it were really the ideal situation, the walk home the next day to one's own room wouldn't be called the walk of shame. Such a report from the university scene is disturbing, but parents need to grasp the predicament a daughter faces in her day-to-day life, or soon will face. As you understand the sexual behavior of today's youth, you can prepare yourself and your daughter for what is ahead. Knowing what is happening can serve as a wake-up call for you to become involved in guiding your daughter toward healthy values and behaviors, both for your girl's sake and for the good of the larger society. The first thing you ought to know is that teens up to the age of 18 and young adults, 18 years of age and older, do not have the same levels of exposure to sexual activity. They face different challenges. The pressures for sexual involvement are much more intense for the older group. The good news is that you may have some critically needed time to prepare your pre-college daughter for what lies ahead when comparing her situation with that of a college student. It is still not a pretty picture, but any breathing room is good when it comes to protecting our daughters. Realize that the numbers we are about to share come from scientific studies. You should give them a lot of credence, but understand that they do not represent your daughter's unalterable destiny. They provide a snapshot of what she may face or become, but they are not the final word. You will have much to say about her destiny, but you will be better equipped to do so by having these facts. So here first are the facts about teen sexual activity. You can find reliable information in several places. One source is the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance, YRBS system, which monitors risky behavior among youth by administering surveys to thousands of students in public and private high schools across the U.S. Because this survey goes out every 2 years, researchers can track trends. Another source is the National Survey of Family Growth, NSFG. With the age of participants ranging from 15 to 44 years, the NSFG asks questions about sexual activity, marriage, pregnancy, and contraceptive use to thousands of men and women every year across the United States. These studies provide some interesting insight into the sexual lives of teens. According to the YRBS 2009 results, about 46% of high school girls have had sexual intercourse, nearly half. This is not uniform across all 4 high school years, however. Among 9th grade girls, about 30% have had sex. If you think that number is too high, just wait. In 10th and 11th grades, about 40% and 50%, respectively, report having had sex. In the 12th grade, a full 65% report having had sex, and about 20% say that they have had more than 4 partners. So between freshman and senior years, the number of girls who have experienced intercourse more than doubles. Clearly, many girls are at risk of sexual involvement during high school. The good news is that you can still play a large role in helping your daughter to overcome this risk. Up to now, we have just mentioned intercourse, but you need to know that other forms of sexual activity, such as oral and anal sex, are also prevalent during high school. Some girls, in fact, choose these non-procreative forms of sexual activity in order to save their virginity and avoid the risk of pregnancy. Oral sex is particularly popular, perhaps due to widespread misconceptions even about what it is and about the problems it might produce. First, many young people do not even consider oral sex to be sexual activity. Several research studies have asked undergraduate students if they would say that they had sex if they had participated in oral sex. Studies performed in 1991 and in 1999 to 2001 revealed that about 40% of college students classified oral sex as sex. When a similar study was repeated in 2007, the results show that only about 20% of college men and women considered oral sex to be sex, a dramatic change from previous years. If these research studies accurately reflect current societal beliefs, we are witnessing a time when a generation's perspective on sexual behavior is actively changing. Another widespread misperception about oral sex is that it is risk-free. One study of college students revealed that fewer than 5% were concerned about STIs, sexually transmitted infections, after being involved in oral sex. However, researcher Dr. Bonnie Halpern-Felsher states, oral sex is not risk-free. There is evidence mounting that oral sex is associated with negative health outcomes such as STIs, including herpes, hepatitis, gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, and HIV. An amazing 40% or more of 15 to 17-year-olds participate in oral sex. Among 18-year-olds, a full 70% report having had oral sex. Anal sex, we are thankful to report, is not as prevalent among teens, but the inherent risks make it a major cause for concern anyway. Among 15 to 17-year-olds, only 5% report having had anal sex. Among 18-year-olds, the number is more worrisome, but it is still far lower than for oral sex, more than 18%. That's not good at all, but it could be worse. What about the sexual activities of young women aged 18 and older? We have a host of data available. The National College Health Risk Behavior Surveillance, part of the YRBS study, is aimed exclusively at college students. Another source of information is the American College Health Association's National College Health Assessment. Drawing from these studies, we can start to put together a picture of the sexual behavior of these young women. and it is alarming. Using NSFG results for American women aged 20 and 21, more than 80% report having had vaginal sex. Just as many report having had oral sex, and more than 25% report having had anal sex. Further, more than 25% of 18 to 24-year-old college students report having had 6 or more sexual partners since becoming sexually active. And many of these college students are sexually active currently, with more than 40% reporting engaging in oral sex and vaginal sex in the past 30 days. Clearly, sexual activity among teen girls and young women is common, presenting many risks to their physical and emotional health. Yet our daughters do not make these decisions in a vacuum. They don't just wake up one day and say, "I think I'll be sexually active." There are many reasons that today's girls and young women engage in acts their mothers and grandmothers would have found unthinkable at the same age. We cannot simply tell them these choices are wrong or unhealthy, and they should just say no, though the choices are often not healthy. We need to understand and respond to the societal norms and expectations that influence young women's thinking and behavior. A 21-year-old woman came into Frida's office for an annual exam. In taking the woman's sexual history, Frida asked if she were in a relationship. The woman said no, not for 9 months. Frida then asked her when she last engaged in intercourse, and she replied, 2 weeks ago. So Frida then asked the woman to clarify her 2 answers. The patient stated that she was not in a relationship with her sexual partner from 2 weeks before. Frida then asked her to define what they were involved in. The 21-year-old told Frida it was just a physical thing. So Frida asked her patient if she used condoms with her partners, and she answered, always. Then Frida asked if she had been physical with anyone else in the last 9 months, and she said yes, with 2 others, and had used condoms with them too. This patient thought that it was okay to have sex whenever she wanted, as long as she used condoms every time. Our daughters face a culture that sees sex as both a sacred right to be exercised with anyone, at any time, and also as no big deal. As many observers of youth culture attest, this culture of hooking up among teens and young adults has come out of the closet. It has also become a topic of substantial research and deserves increased attention from parents. Hooking up. What does that mean? Those who interview young people find that they define a hookup in a number of ways, but it usually indicates a sexual encounter that may or may not include intercourse. Key elements actually involve what is lacking, at least from a traditional perspective on relations between the sexes. One significant characteristic is that romance frequently is not a part of the relationship. Often 2 people have sex even though they have no pre-existing romantic attachment. Another is the lack of expectation or obligation on the part of the participants for any future relationship. It is definitely a no-strings-attached approach to sexual activity between friends, acquaintances, or even complete strangers. Tom Wolfe's 2004 novel, I Am Charlotte Simmons, painted a frightening picture of the convoluted sexual practices on college campuses that is actually quite realistic. Seemingly in contrast to the hookup culture, the National Survey of Family Growth tells us that more than 70% of girls have sex for the first time with someone with whom they are in a committed relationship, either going steady, cohabiting, engaged, or married. But this relationship-oriented approach to sex doesn't last long for many girls and young women. A large national survey of middle school and high school students who were followed over time illustrates the high occurrence of casual sexual encounters among teens. Most of these students engaged in sexual activity for the first time, as we said, with a girlfriend or boyfriend. However, within that same year, 75% of these students also had sex with a casual partner. Apparently, having first sex in the context of a relationship is no defense against having casual sex later. In many cases, it seems to simply open the door to sexual relations with more people and denial of the unavoidable emotional consequences. See Chapter 6, Emotional Attachment, for more information. In another study of more than 1,000 teens in Ohio, more than 50% of the girls who were sexually active had engaged in sex outside of a romantic relationship. Most of these sexual encounters were with a friend, many with an ex-boyfriend. Hooking up can describe any sexually oriented activity from kissing to intercourse. This includes being sexually stimulated or stimulating another person sexually. A term often used for this activity is mutual masturbation. Since this activity does not include penetration of the female, except perhaps by the fingers of a guy, many young people consider it safe. It is not. Several sexually transmitted infections can be spread by this activity, including syphilis. Perhaps more importantly, emotional issues can accompany this form of hooking up. Finally, most adults understand that mutual masturbation is no more than foreplay. A couple practicing this behavior will soon not be satisfied and will often progress to intercourse. Hooking up is especially prevalent among college students. Some research shows that men and women have about twice as many hookups as first dates. In one study, 78% of college undergrads reported having participated in hookups, with a third of the women reporting that the hookup included intercourse. Young men and women agree about what happens in a typical hookup. Usually they are at a bar or party where alcohol is being consumed, see a stranger or acquaintance whom they are attracted to, flirt or dance with this person, go to a private place, engage in sexual activity, then leave without future obligation. College students believe this is normal heterosexual behavior, and unfortunately it has indeed become normal, as the statistics we have shown suggest. Karen Owen, a recent graduate of Duke University, sparked a national sensation when a PowerPoint of her sexual encounters with 13 athletes at Duke went viral. Even some of today's feminists were aghast at such openness about sexual behavior. Caitlin Flanagan of The Atlantic writes, "We've made a culture for our college women in which they have been liberated from the curfews and parietals that were once the bane of co-eds, but one in which they have also shaken off the general suspicion of male sexuality that was the hallmark of Andrea Dworkin-style campus activism. They prefer bikini waxes and spray tans to overalls and invective. So they have ended up with the protections of neither the patriarchy nor those old-school, man-hating radical feminists. Yet the growing prevalence of this behavior apparently rests at least partly on a misperception. Research shows that both male and female college students actually overestimate their classmates' comfort level with hooking up. While large numbers of young people may be uncomfortable with hooking up, many mistakenly believe that they are in the minority when they feel doubt and discomfort. When asked to compare their comfort level with that of their male and female peers on campus, young women believe, on average, that others feel more comfortable with hooking up than they do. Some female college students report that they drink alcohol with the intention of loosening their very natural inhibitions to hooking up. Alcohol consumption, not surprisingly, plays a large part in the hookup culture. Alcohol is a standard part of the hookup in many college students' minds. One study shows that more than 80% of hookups involve alcohol, while another indicates that more than 90% of college students expect alcohol to be involved in hookups. Alcohol seems to play a major role in the sexual involvement of young people. Nearly 1/4 of sexually active high school students report using drugs or alcohol during their most recent sexual experience, and nearly 1 in 5 teens said that they were under the influence of drugs or alcohol when they had sex for the first time. In one study of college women, 23% reported a history of unwanted sexual intercourse. Of those incidents, 78% took place while hooking up. When the women were asked about the factors that contributed to the unwanted sexual intercourse, 62% said that their judgment was impaired by alcohol or drugs, and 32% said that they were taken advantage of while they were drunk. Clearly, substance abuse affects a person's ability to make judgments about sexual behavior, thus increasing the risk for pregnancy, sexual assault, and sexually transmitted infections. However, alcohol and hooking up are not the only societal currents pulling our daughters in the wrong directions. We briefly mentioned another new activity, this one enabled by today's technology, called sexting. Sexting involves young people using technologies such as cell phones and the internet to send sexually suggestive messages or nude, semi-nude pictures of themselves to others. Unfortunately, many of them also see this behavior as entirely normal. Although media reports about the terrible consequences of sexting have made parents more aware of how it can put girls and young women at risk, most are probably unaware that their own daughter may be participating. And national statistics tell us that many of these daughters are. Are you among the masses of parents comfortably believing your daughter couldn't possibly be involved? Think again. The National Campaign to Prevent Teen and Unplanned Pregnancy teamed with CosmoGirl.com on a 2008 survey of nearly 1,300 teens and young adults about sexting. Among the results, 22% of 13 to 19-year-old girls responding to the survey say they have electronically sent or posted nude or semi-nude pictures of themselves. 36% of 20 to 26-year-olds admit to doing the same. 37% of 13 to 19-year-olds and 56% of 20 to 26-year-olds say they have sent or posted sexually suggestive messages. The prevalence of sexting among both teens and young adults speaks to one potential negative impact of technology and the need for adult supervision and guidance. Without parental input, young people can quickly get in over their heads. In one well-publicized case, 6 high school teens in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, faced child pornography charges after 3 girls shared nude or semi-nude photos of themselves with male classmates via cell phone. While that may be an unusual example, it shows what can happen. The sexualized nature of our culture has a huge influence on our daughters, especially as they pass through high school and college. About 2/3 of them will have had sex by the time they graduate from high school, both within a romantic relationship and a casual partnership. By the time they graduate from college, the vast majority of these young women will have had sex. Many will have participated in high-risk behaviors, including having multiple partners, a partner with multiple partners, sex under the influence of drugs or alcohol, anal sex, or oral sex. Many parents, and perhaps you as well, will find this information frightening, and rightly so. These statistics illustrate how toxic the environment is for our daughters. For those who want to swim against the tide and maintain their virginity until marriage, it seems that every influence is against them. Our daughters have high educational and career goals, yet we see how difficult it is for them to stay focused on their studies and not be drawn into sexual distraction and involvement. And of course, the same can be said for those who have high family goals of being married, having children, and staying married. Going against the grain of popular culture is difficult for anyone, but it is especially hard for young people who are so conscious of trends, fashion, and peers. The data we have highlighted show the negative consequences inherent in sexual involvement outside of a lifelong, faithful relationship. They show how such involvement threatens the lives and potentials of many teen girls and most young women, even yours. We would like to think our own daughters are not at risk, but the statistics presented in this chapter counsel vigilance. Therefore, you must not only be concerned about your daughter's well-being through these formative years, you must also be prepared to guide her through the tough decisions and perplexing situations that she will likely face. In the next chapter, we will take an unflinching look at some of the most immediate and measurable negative consequences of sexual activity among youth. Sexually transmitted infections. We are not including this information to scare you or your daughter. We simply want to arm you with the facts so that you and your daughter can more realistically discuss wise sexual choices. Parenting is not for the faint of heart or the uninvolved. If you want to protect and support your daughter, it will cost you in terms of time, money, effort, even relational pain. But think of this as a calling and the costs as investments, because the payoff in the life of your daughter could be huge. No, there are no guarantees, but we believe your daughter has a much better likelihood of surviving and thriving during these difficult years if you stay engaged and provide the cover she so desperately needs. For a girl uncovered is a girl at risk. Chapter 4. STIs. Joe saw a young woman for infertility. She and her husband had been trying to become pregnant for 3 years. Joe performed the usual preliminary tests, such as a sperm count, and found nothing wrong. Fallopian tubes suggested blockage. Joe did a laparoscopy, which is the insertion of a viewing instrument through an incision in the edge of her umbilicus. What he saw immediately revealed why she could not get pregnant. Her internal female organs looked as though someone had poured glue all over them. Her fallopian tubes were not only blocked by extensive scarring, they were stuck to her ovaries. Also, her ovaries and tubes were stuck to some of her intestines and to her uterus. In short, her female organs were an inoperable mess of scar tissue. What caused all this? The woman had been a flight attendant before marriage and had been sexually involved with several men. She had become infected with an STI but had never felt a thing. But the damage was real and irreversible. Joe saw this situation over and over again. All infertility doctors do. Do teens and young adults really know the risks involved with all of the sexual activity that they report? Do they have any idea about the STIs they may encounter? They may think they know the risks. Between 85 and 90% of high school students say they have been taught in school about HIV and AIDS. And more than 50% of college students say that they have received STI information from their college or university. So most of these young people would say that they have been educated about STIs, including HIV. If education is so prevalent, then why do so many take part in risky sexual behavior such as hookups? In one recent study, only about 50% of college students who reported having intercourse during a hookup said that they were concerned about getting an STI. And of those who had oral sex during the hookup, less than 50% were worried about a possible STI. When the college students were asked why they were not concerned about getting an STI,